I guess for my show, it's normally just Hindi films for the most part. They're the language that has been covered on this show, I think primarily, if it isn't English, has been Hindi or of the, I guess, Indian subcontinent, because I don't think I've ever covered a Spanish language film on the show before.
Wow.
Oh, and not for any particular reason, not for anything that I would say is like, oh, I don't like to watch movies with subtitles. I watch everything with subtitles now because I'm going deaf, I feel like the rest of us. But yeah, Spanish language is not something I would normally gravitate towards just because, again, I don't have that inroad to it, right? Does that make sense?
Yeah, I guess so. I mean, with Spanish language films, I mean, you're talking about so many different countries, but when it comes to like South American stuff, it's not like, oh, this is the hot new film from Peru or something.
Right.
It's like, of course, Brazil has a huge film industry. They're not speaking Spanish, though. Mexico has a pretty strong film industry, but Spain itself, I mean, they've gone through so many rough times that, there are some classics out there, like, what is it, Tomb of the Blind Dead and those types of films, all the Paul Naschy films and things. But, so many spaghetti westerns were shot in Spain, but they weren't being presented to us in Spanish. But yeah, I guess it's probably only maybe over the last 30 years, probably really around the time that Thesis came out, that you started to see a real resurgence. Because as I was watching it, I kept trying to think of other Spanish language films from that time, because I want to say there was one where it was about a blind girl, and then there was one about like it might have been the same movie. She was like there was something to do with like corpses and anatomy. In fact, it might have been called Anatomy, but I'm not sure. I barely remember the cover of it.
Interesting. Yeah. Because we talk about Indian films a lot on this show, and then I have Bollywood Cinema Club, and there haven't even been like American remakes of Indian cinema that I could point to as like, oh, that was an Indian film that's being remade in the States in English. But what's weird is like one of the first big Spanish language films being remade came out this year with that Woody Harrelson movie, Champions, because that's based off of a Spanish language film aptly titled Campeones.
Yes.
Fucking shocker. But it was surprising because when I looked that movie up, I like watched the trailer for it and I was like, this doesn't seem like an English film. This seems like a remake of something. And then it's a remake of a Spanish language film.
Amenábar's second film, Open Your Eyes, Abra los Ojos, that was Vanilla Sky. And then I want to say there's another, and trust me, Abra los Ojos, great movie. I have yet to try Vanilla Sky because I have no desire.
But I can't imagine. I couldn't imagine why. It has nothing to do with the fact that it's not a great movie. I have seen Vanilla Sky, but I guess, we never covered it. I don't know what I would have watched it for because,
it was a Tom Cruise movie. It was huge.
Yeah, it's a Tom Cruise movie, all right.
And Cameron Crowe, and they're hot off the heels of Jerry Maguire. They're reteaming, and they've got hot Penelope Cruz in there. And I'm trying to think, there's another one that just came out a few years ago that was also a remake, but I think that was a South American film. I'm surprised that nobody's remade Time Crimes yet. I don't know if you've seen that one.
Yeah, that would have been the last any Spanish language film that I would have had anyone suggest to me was Time Crimes, which I think I don't even think I've ever even seen. I know what it's about, but I don't think I've ever seen it, or somebody covered it for the site a long time ago. That's what I've heard. It came out at kind of the same time as what's that? The movie about the box, the time traveling box one. You know what I'm talking about? Where I forget what it's called. It's that same thing where it's like a low budget time travel movie.
Oh, Primer. Yeah.
Primer. That's what it is. Yeah. The one with the box.
Yeah.
What do I host a fucking movie podcast here? Jesus Christ. Speaking of movie podcasts, I'm the host of the Culture Cast, Chris Stachiw, the show that you're listening to, and I'm joined by my good friend, the host of the Projection Booth. It's not Mike White May anymore, but hey, Mike White is joining me. He's Mike White.
Soy aquí.
Sí, también. And on this episode, if you can't tell that we're going to be talking about a Spanish language film, we are. We're going to be talking about 1996's Spanish language film that you can find right now on YouTube, and I'll put the link in the description, 1996 is Alejandro Amenábar's Thesis.
¿Qué es el cine? Es dinero. Ahí fuera está la industria norteamericana dispuesta a pisotearos y solo hay un modo de competir con ellos. Dar al público lo que quiere.
Tengo porno de todas las categorías. Porno light, gore, sado, oriental.
Si eso es todo lo que tienes.
Así que la nena quiere marcha, ¿eh?
¿Has visto alguna vez un muerto?
¿Tú qué crees?
No me refiero a un muerto en televisión. Me refiero a un muerto real.
Bueno, supongo que ya os habréis enterado de la triste noticia. El martes murió Figueroa.
Estás desvariando.
No estoy desvariando. Encontraste al viejo muerto y le robaste la cinta, como si lo viera.
Esta cinta es mía.
¿Y qué pasa? ¿No la puedo ver?
La necesito para mi tesis.
Y una mierda. ¿Qué coño hay en esa cinta?
Eligen a una persona cualquiera. La raptan, la torturan, la matan y lo graban con una cámara de vídeo.
El gilipollas ha hecho un zoom digital.
¿Y eso qué importa?
¿Podemos averiguar qué cámara utilizó?
¿Y qué piensas hacer ahora? ¿Perseguir al primero que veas con esa cámara?
¿Te vale esta? ¿Pero cómo se te ocurre hacerle una entrevista?
Te juro que me presionó.
Estoy loco por ti. Ese tío, además de un pijo de mierda, es un psicópata.
Puede que Bosco no tenga nada que ver con esto.
Te has enamorado del malo, imbécil.
Creo que alguien ha estado registrando mi dormitorio.
¿Pero qué coño haces ahí? Ese tío está implicado.
¡No te muevas!
Esto no es algo aislado, es un negocio. Esa gente trafica con cintas. Accidentes, torturas, asesinatos, allá abajo tienen de todo. Te matarán para hacer una película.
Me llamo Ángela. Me van a matar.
The film was released in 1996, and it stars Ana Torrent, Fele Martínez, Eduardo Noriega, and Zabia Elorriaga. And Ana Torrent plays Angela, who is starting her titular thesis about a violence in cinema and in the family. And she stumbles upon what might be a snuff film. Maybe, possibly. Her friend Kima helps her find out all about the world of underground pornographic and violent film. And along the way, we meet Bosco, a young man who definitely doesn't resemble Patrick Bateman in a lot of ways, but hey, it's definitely not intentional or anything. And it's all set off by the death, possibly murder, of her film professor, Professor Figueroa. So, Mike, I am going to kick it to you first. When was the first time you saw Thesis, and what did you think then? And if you didn't see it before now, what did you think watching it for this episode?
I know that I've seen the movie before. It did make a splash in the kind of indie film scene, probably when it came out or the next year, 97. So I probably saw it 97, 98, something like that. Probably rented it maybe on DVD. It might have still been the VHS clinging on to that. And I didn't remember a lot about it. So watching it again now, all these years later, it was basically like seeing it for the first time. I just remembered liking it. And so when you asked me to be part of this, I was like, oh, yeah, I'd love to revisit that film because I can't remember it. And I thought it was great. I had a great time watching it. I love how the movie starts in darkness and that we have darkness, you know, what we see versus what we don't see. And her whole thing of listening to violence rather than watching the violence and how she prepares herself to watch the violence. And then there's even a scene later on where they're in the dark completely and you just hear their voices again. It's a really nice kind of motif that we have going through this movie. I thought it was really well made, very well written, pretty darn well acted. I thought it was really firing on all cylinders. I'm curious to hear what you thought of this one.
I had never seen it. I had never heard of it. I ended up programming this month, so I just kind of went out there and did some research and, you know, found the Spanish language movies that are, I guess some people would think have any value in being watched, and that's probably a lot of them, but this is a rather narrow swath is more what I'm getting at. So this is the horror movie of the month, and so I was excited for that because, again, as someone who's a fan of horror movies, I always know that horror and comedy are two genres in filmmaking that, especially in foreign, international, whatever the hell you want to call it, film, the perspective that they bring is often very uniquely rooted in the culture. And sometimes in comedy's case, it's really hard to appreciate the comedy in non-English language films because there's cultural barriers and delivery, and subtitles are kind of the worst in non-English language comedies, that they don't help. Like I mean, we've talked about it before, but horror movies, on the other hand, because they operate in a different language and sometimes they don't even need the actual spoken language. They just operate in the language of film. It's much more interesting, and they can get away with more, and they tend to be even more successful. So I was excited to watch it, and I think I agree with you completely. It is just it's a weird movie because it's a horror movie, but it's kind of treading the line. It reminded me more of, I'm sure we'll talk about this, it reminded me of Blowout a little bit. Again, it reminded me of again, there's like a not found footagey, but there's this voyeuristic aspect to this movie that reminded me a little bit also of something like a Videodrome, or again, because it's asking questions about what A is the value of violence in media, and B, what are the outcomes intended or unintended of exposure to said violence through the media. And I'm not sure how successful the second part of that statement is with the movie, because I think it kind of gets to that a little later than the other stuff. And I think the movie's front loaded with the message, because when you have a killer student and a killer teacher chasing students down throughout the movie, it's, a little on the nose, but again, like what they're getting at is similar to what Scream is getting at, which is, the violence in the media and what are kind of the reasons for it, right? And I don't know, like I think it's a lot more introspective of a movie than I was expecting from a horror movie about a student who finds a snuff tape by accident.
Now, Chris, don't blame the movies. Movies don't make people killers. Movies make killers more creative.
That's right.
Yeah.
I'm losing a lot of blood here, man. I'm getting a little woozy. That's what it reminded me of in a way. It has that, again, the idea of violence in movies then becoming real. And also the violence being presented to us having an effect on us. I mean, that's what the movie gets at. I think we should mention, though, we're going to talk spoilers, which is not something I frankly mention. More or less, we're always talking spoilers on both of our shows. But I want to mention spoilers because I think this is a movie that you can go track down on YouTube. It's totally worth checking out. And I think it's an easy entry point if you've never seen Spanish language films to you don't have to pay anything to watch it. It's on YouTube. It's got subtitles that work, which is surprising given the amount of times we've watched things recently that don't. But it's free and it's a horror movie. And so like those two things, like it's a good entry point, but also like the things that happen in the movie are better received if you don't know where it's going, I feel like, especially once it gets to the end. So spoilers from here on out, but definitely check the movie out because if you haven't figured it out already, it's definitely worth the watch. But let's dig into it a little bit. So it's a movie about snuff films, right? More or less, and the effects snuff films have. I
would say just violence overall. I mean, but I think there definitely is a fascination with death. I mean, that the opening of the film is her on this train and you hear the announcer before you see anything, again, starting in darkness, and just this whole thing like, hey, somebody threw themselves on the track. Do not look. Keep your eyes straight. Just keep on looking. And she wants to look. She has that need to see it. And when the hand comes and grabs her and pulls her away, and she then has to, fly right and fly straight and just not pay attention to this, I think it really gets to her because I think her curiosity needs to be sated. And that's so much of her and her thesis is, I'm going to do a thesis about violence in the media. And I think more than anything, she just wants to be exposed to it. I think she just has this curiosity. And it's nice that it's a female character, that it's not a male character that we have here. And because we don't think of women wanting to know about the violence. And even though that's weird because violence happens to them way more than it happens to men. And that is really where the root of these whole snuff films are. These aren't men getting killed and tortured in these films. These are women getting killed and tortured, or tortured and killed. And yeah, it's when I don't know why they just kept a snuff tape in the school library, though. That seems a little odd.
Well, and it's, you mentioned the idea of, the feminine perspective on violence and being drawn to it. And, we talk about the the male gaze on women in cinema, right? Because it's that's how it's normally presented. And then in something like this or in Videodrome with the Debbie Harry character, that's what it kind of reminded me of Videodrome, where it has that feminine character. In this, like you said, I'm totally on board with it being a woman in this movie. It needed to be the way that they're telling the story. But it has that thing that Debbie Harry's character has in Videodrome where she's like drawn to it. And I'm going to go on vacation to Pittsburgh and I'm going to go audition on Videodrome. It's lady. Come on.
Yeah.
Those shots of the women in the chair being beaten are, again, it's Videodrome goes further because it's trying to do something different, but it's doing that same thing of presenting you as the audience, not only watching this horrible thing, but also watching the characters watching it, reacting to it. And again, in this case of, Anna Torrent's character, she can't look away.
Mm-hmm.
Every time
she tries.
She tries to draw herself away, but she just can't.
That whole thing where she records the audio of the tape rather than watching it. When she gets the tape that her professor was watching, we don't know what happened to the professor. Did he get so scared while he was watching this that he died? Is this the ultimate horror tape? And then she wants to see it, but she can't bring herself to see it. And I love when she's turning down the contrast on the screen, and then you just hear those horrific screams of the woman on the tape, and then that she makes that tape of the video, the audio version of it, and is listening to it, and it's just terrible. And that is also nice that she's listening to that. And then we have that amazing scene earlier when she and Chema are meeting, and that she's listening to her music, he's listening to his music. And we have that whole like cross cutting of the music from one another. So many smart things that this movie is doing. And then to bring back the headphones later on with the screaming.
Well, and you mentioned the smart things that the movie does. Alejandro Amenábar just spends so much of the movie, I would say, flexing his stylistic choices is the way I would put it. Like, he knows exactly what he wants you as the audience to see, and he spends a lot of time with the lighting and the set design. Just, those scenes where they're locked in that basement and the lights keep going in and out. And it's just, you have to understand that this is a debut for this filmmaker, but it doesn't feel like it. He already feels like a confident filmmaker right now. And, coming from Milos Forman month, where, early on in his career, he was doing something like Black Peter, which, again, not an English language film, that same thing of like a confident filmmaker just showing you what he's interested in. I love that there are still filmmakers out there that are willing to just be like, I'm going to do whatever the hell I want, and I don't want to play by any sort of rules. Because there's a lot, I wouldn't say taboo stuff in this movie, but it's not for the faint of heart.
Right.
It does show pretty graphic violence.
Well, it does and it doesn't. Right. There are times where it will show things like when she is over at Kema's place and watching, the person walking up behind all of the prisoners and shooting them each one in the head. That's horrific. But they do a smart job of when to cut away from that, to cut to her face or to his face, for us to gauge what are their impressions on this. You talked about that. Like, it's the whole us watching them watching something else, and you mentioned Blowout, and I totally agree because of the whole scopophilia thing. Brian De Palma loves to look at voyeurism. And then that when we find out that Kema was, shooting her looking at Bosco, and just this whole thing of, who's looking at who and who's observing who, and putting her in that female investigator position, I thought was great. That she, not only is she investigating her thesis, but then she starts to investigate Bosco and getting these little clues and stuff. And, how much do we trust him? How much do we trust Kema? How much do we trust, the new professor that comes in to replace the old professor? Really, really well done.
And actually, another thing it kind of touched on, and again, violence towards women. There was a little girl with the dragon tattoo-y investigative thing with the two of them, Anna and Kema, kind of going around looking through the cameras and all, and, and doing the investigative groundwork. And I loved that part of the movie. I was enthralled where they're talking about, the cameras, and she has to go to the Sony kind of distributor and she's asking them all these questions. I enjoyed this movie so much. Like, it's a really fun movie, and I'm kind of surprised. It hasn't come up from anybody at any point. And like, I've never heard anybody mention this movie to me, which seems a little strange as well, because there's some themes in it that I feel like, again, like the things that I watch, I tend to have similar themes and things that I look for. And again, like, this is right in that wheelhouse of just, violence and what is the violence ultimately serving? Who is it serving? Because in this movie, you have the two antagonists who are, again, like, their reasonings for why they're doing things seems to just be, for one, financial, and the other, control. Mm-hmm. So that's an interesting angle to go, because I mean, again, the money part is such a, it feels like always the snuff thing is like, it's for money. Rich people are paying a lot of money to have, a homeless person murdered on camera or something. And it's like there's that weird barrier of it's the haves and the have-nots, the haves taking advantage of the have-nots. And the professor, we don't get a whole lot of sense. Maybe that's the one failing of the movie, is that professor kind of is a cipher, but he doesn't need to be more than that. He's almost a red herring in a way.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
yeah, because he comes in basically, maybe the first little bit of the second act, and just kind of shows up and gives this little speech about, how Americans are basically eating their lunch and they really need to look at the economics of film. And he's really stressing more of, like you're saying, the money over the art. He's more about the commerce than the art. And yeah, that definitely plays out with him making money off of these tapes.
Yeah, it extends to the reality of, so the character of Bosco is an interesting character because, again, he's very like prototypical of, Patrick Bateman and other kind of nice looking, like well-kempt serial killers, right? Yeah. He's a
Ted Ulrich, yeah.
Yeah, Ted Bundy type, right? Like, but what's interesting is the movie does a lot to speak to Angela's sexualization of him. Mm-hmm. And like, what does that mean for her to be drawn to someone who is possibly so violent, but she is like over sexualizing him to the point of like having effectively wet dreams about him.
Oh yeah. Yeah. That dream is amazing because there's so many things going on in there with him, breaking in, quote unquote, because he's there. He's the man of her dreams, a little like Freddy Krueger, and coming in and just like when he is getting closer to her, playing that game about, each question or each word, he'll move halfway closer. And when he's like, what color are my eyes? And we get that again later on in the film. I thought that was really cool. And then, yeah, that he goes down on her, which you do not expect. And then that whole thing of the camera looking at her. And now she suddenly becomes the object to be looked at, even though she was the one who was doing the looking before. And then when he penetrates her with the knife, and thank goodness, we don't get the kind of like waking up in a cold sweat type of thing. Like, he keeps us in suspense. Like, when she wakes up the next morning, it's like, oh, does she have a mark on her neck? What happened? Is she stabbed? What's going on? Like, what part is what? Was it a fake knife that has the retractable blade or whatever? So, yeah, there was a lot of things where I was like, oh, wow, okay. Or like, even when she walks into her house and he's there behind the door and you're like, oh, shit. And then her family's like, oh, yeah, your friend Bosco's here. Come on.
No, and you're totally right. Those moments are the moments in the movie where the director really, like I said, he knows exactly what he wants. And it's so, I don't know, it's so refreshing to see that from a debut, because I haven't seen any of his other films. I mean, we were talking before we recorded that his next film was remade into Vanilla Sky, which unfortunately I have seen. But I know he directed a Javier Bardem film, The Sea Within, I believe, which again sounds interesting. I found that one because there's actually a shocking Indian cinema remake with Hrithik Roshan of all people. Oh, wow. Yeah, where he plays a quadriplegic magician as opposed to a quadriplegic fisherman. So, but have
you seen The Others? Because he directed that one too.
Mm-mm.
Oh, okay. I can't say I was a big fan of that one.
Yeah, was that Nicole Kidman, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Where she's a ghost. Oops, spoilers.
I was like, isn't that the movie that has like a massive twist at the end? Like, that's all I know about it.
Yeah, I just saved you 2 hours of time. So she's a ghost. Yeah.
Yeah, cool.
Stuff keeps moving because there are real living people in the house. She's the ghost.
Wow.
Bum, bum, bum.
Cool. I'm glad I just missed it.
Yeah.
Drove right by.
I know some people loved it. It was very, very atmospheric. That's great. But the one movie that he made.
That's great.
The movie that he made that I want to really check out is called Regression with Ethan Hawke and Emma Watson and David Thewlis, because I like those actors and actresses a lot. But there's another one. What's it? Was it Agora? It's one with Rachel Weisz, and it's this whole thing of how she is figuring out all of these scientific things that basically the Christian church is like, no, like the way we said is the way of the world. And she's like figuring out like, no, like, simple things like the world is actually round and all these kind of things like that. Or like, it's not a earth-centered or even sun-centered universe, that there are all of these other things going on. Kind of reminded me of a character from 3,000 Years of, was it 3,000 Years of Longing or 3,000 Years of Solitude? The one with Tilda Swinton and Idris Elba.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Regression is one of those satanic panic movies, isn't it?
I think you're right.
Yeah, interesting. Yeah, I think we came across that when we were talking about Michelle Remembers many moons ago on Scary Story. Yeah, fucking satanic panic stuff. And that would kind of make sense because there is, I wouldn't say there's a satanic panic vibe to this movie, but anytime you talk about snuff, satanic panic is kind of waiting in the wings for that. I mean, again, because where I grew up, there was a house in the neighborhood that was like a burned ass house, and kids talked about that's where they would go and sacrifice cats and shit. As like, you're talking about kids murdering things, which is one step away from them filming it and posting it on YouTube, which is what they would be doing now. And that's what this movie is kind of getting at, is like, okay, this violence, who the hell is this violence for? Like, who is it for? And if we don't know who it's for, why are we putting it out into the world? Because we don't know who might be receiving it, and receiving it in the worst way possible. Because again, they don't get into it with the Bosco character. He's not a cipher per se, but because of where the movie ends up going, they can't let the cat out of the bag until essentially the last 2 minutes of the movie, which is perfectly fine. But it does kind of leave you wondering, why is he doing what he's doing? It's not that it's not made clear, but I'm not saying we need the Skeet Ulrich type moment in this movie, but I do like those moments when they give the villain a moment to kind of just, be a real shithead and monologue for a second. I mean, I know as Bondy and as it is, in Scream, you quoted it. I think about the scene in Girl with the Dragon Tattoo with Stellan Skarsgård, where he's kind of taunting Daniel Craig and going through all those motions. And we get it here a little bit, but because of the way the movie is, the Eduardo Noriega Bosco character is kind of just, he's less a character and almost like a plot device.
Yeah. Yeah. He doesn't have, because I think, to your point, the whole thing at the very end of the film, just to jump all the way to the end for a moment, when, the plot's been foiled, the killers have been killed, have had their comeuppance, and they say on the news, here's all of these horrible things that have happened, and we're about to show the film itself. And I was like, what?
Yeah.
And that just, to me, it's like that phone ringing at the end of The Lawnmower Man. Like, somebody's going to pick up, right? Somebody's going to be watching that and be like, oh, fuck, this is my kink. Like, shit, I never knew how much this is turning me on to see a woman killed on TV. And it's like, for fuck's sakes, media. And it just feels like that's the critique, that we get all the way to the end and we're like, see, this violence really does affect us, and we really should be very careful about this, because you let this genie out of the bottle, you can never put it back in again. And I don't think that they hit that as much as they should. There's a whole, Kema is a very interesting character because he should be the killer. You know, he's got the long scraggly hair, he's got the glasses, the kind of ratty goatee and stuff.
Listens to Metallica. Dresses in black. He's a fucking not Nightbreed. He does have a Nightbreed poster, Casa Noches, on his, but he's wearing a shirt with Radu from Subspecies on it. Which shout out to Heather Drain in that episode. I texted her. I was like, you're not going to believe this, but there's a character wearing a Subspecies T-shirt in this. Nice. Yeah, but that's the whole thing, right? It's like the Damien Eccles conversation, right? It's like they're the ones who did it because look, they're already into this stuff. It's like that's not how this works.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and he should be the one that is the murderer, but yet it feels like, and he's the most interesting character to me because it feels like he was flirting with it but didn't go through with it, because when they reveal like, oh yeah, he knew Bosco, he knew the professor, it's like, oh, okay, how deep do you go? And then that they keep trying to pin, it's like she doubts him the most. She doubts him way more than she doubts Bosco, that she doubts the professor. It's just like, no, it's got to be Kema. And it's just like, why is that? Well, he's got the long hair and it's like all of those things. Like, I'm surprised he's not showing up to school in a black trench coat, you know?
Right. No, and I think one of the smartest things about this movie is, like you mentioned, the casting. I mean, Fele Martínez is, obviously now, Goya award-winning actor multiple times over, but he is so good in this movie.
Oh, yeah.
Because he's given the role where, like you mentioned, you're supposed to have a lot of doubt for this character. Essentially, not from the moment you meet him, but there's kind of a moment in the movie where he goes, well, and it's like, finish your fucking statement. And it's like, finish the statement. He's like, well, I was also filming with these cameras. And it's that, that smart moment of the filmmaker giving a pause. Character doesn't have to finish the statement for you to understand that there's now doubt in the scenario. And from that moment on, up until you find out what is happening, anytime he talks, again, Fele Martínez is saddled with a thankless job of being the guy who's under suspicion, keeps making himself look suspicious, but is ultimately not guilty at all. And that's such a hard role to play because, again, it's like the dude playing a dude disguised as another dude. You have to do several layers of hoop jumping to make it really work, where you're making it clear you're not in on the joke. And he's really well cast in this movie. Everybody is, but the amount of time that you spend with him and on a torrent, their chemistry is really good. And it's rather believable too.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, definitely. Because she really can't stand him at first, which I was like, okay, great. And they're really thrown into this as almost rivals. Their relationship reminded me a little bit of, was it Alex de la Iglesias, Dia de la Bestia, where it's, and if you haven't seen that one, I really recommend it. It's a priest who knows that the Antichrist is coming, so he's trying to do as many evil things as he can to summon Satan so he can kill Satan. And he partners up with this heavy metal dude because he's got pentagrams, he's got all this kind of stuff. So like that uneasy relationship between the priest and the metalhead is just like, it reminded me of our two main characters in this movie, but that's much more of a comedy.
Yeah, this movie's not a comedy. This movie, there's nary a joke to be had. And to be fair, the Kema character, Kima, he's not. We have all known someone like him, but he has a Nazi skull pin on his jacket. I'm assuming you noticed that as well, right? Mm-hmm. And again, like, that was such a thing in the 90s. It feels, like this, this movie feels like, again, like it lives in the same space as like a necromantic. Like the subject material is not the same, but it has that same quality to it, the filmmaking quality. And it was, I don't know, again, like he's such kind of a strange character to find sympathetic because they do a lot to make him very off-putting.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah. Yeah, 100%. And just that when he keeps like hitting on her and saying offensive things, and you're just, luckily, I have known a person like this or two, and you're just like, this guy's just bluster. There's probably a heart of gold somewhere underneath there.
Right.
Eventually he does, say, okay, yeah, you can come over here and watch these films. But then he keeps, like, oh, hey, you're in my room kind of thing. There was a laugh for me. There was one big laugh for me when she knows that somebody has been in her room and she's just like, oh yeah, like this was messed up and that was messed up. Has your room been broken into? And he's sitting there on his bed. And I think it's like a high angle looking down on him. And he looks around and it's just his whole room is trash. And he's just like, oh yeah, no, nobody's been in here.
I love his apartment.
Oh yeah.
It's such like a 90s, mid 90s apartment. Like, oh my God. It's, again, like the chemistry between the characters, the leads in this reminds me a little bit also of, again, not necessarily in the subject material, but kind of, what's the world and the brutality of it. A little Shallow Grave as well. Mm-hmm. Just that, like the brutality of the world surrounding these people and the depths that they have to go to survive. Because the Anna Torrent character has a gun pointed at her not once, but I guess only once. But then she does the gun pointing the second time around. And that scene with the professor who comes out of the dark, speaking of the dark, to get her, that scene is just, it's shocking to say the least. I mean, everything about the scene where they go down into these kind of subterranean tunnels to look for these cameras and the masters, and then they get trapped, her and Kima, and then she wakes up and he's gone and she's looking for him, and then the professor just comes out of nowhere. I loved that interaction, and again, it's so well shot and there's so much close-ups right on top of them the entire time that even though they're not like in a coffin or anything, it just feels insanely claustrophobic, but it does a good job of replicating those images that she's seeing constantly of the close-up violence. Because again, it's the movie obviously is a movie, but it's also trying to replicate that movie that they keep showing and the close-up shots of the violence.
It's amazing to me that this was done 3 years before 8mm, which was such a big sensation. Oh my God, snuff and all this kind of stuff. But I think this one does it a lot better.
Well, I think it's just a more compelling story. It's a smaller scale story. I mean, it is, but it isn't. There are there are ramifications of what's going on, that this has been going on for a while, and who knows who they've been selling the tapes to. And there's a lot of directions that you could go with another follow-up to this or another story similar to this one. But yeah, it does kind of have that same underground nasty. I mean, that comes with snuff, right? Like you're meeting someone in a dark alleyway somewhere to buy a snuff film from them. You're not meeting them at the local McDonald's unless they happen to be selling you a tape of what is it in Videodrome? Japanese sex, geisha sex. What I'm talking about? It's normally not as graphic as snuff, but yeah, as snuff films, there's a level of grime and grit and disgustingness that a snuff film brings to whatever you're talking about. Even if it's a documentary, I don't know if you've seen the snuff film documentary, Snuff. I mean, that is, even though it's a documentary, it feels grimy and gross. And it's like, ooh, this is just a documentary and it's disgusting.
I'm trying to remember when the guinea pig series was out, because it feels like that was happening around this time as well.
Oh my God.
Yeah, you remember what I'm talking about, right?
Yeah.
And that was one where, what was that? Like, somehow, of all the people to like blow the whistle on those films, it was fucking Charlie Sheen, who thought that they were all real and was just like, oh my God, these are snuff films, stop this. It was like,
yes, what? I remember that. And he saw the videotape and he reported it. Yeah. Snuff films and movies about snuff films, I don't know. I find it personally interesting. Mm-hmm. It's I mean, again, we talked about this, or Spencer Parsons and I talked about this when we did the Poughkeepsie Tapes episode on Scary Stories We Tell. And I've done the Poughkeepsie Tapes episode on this show as well. Like, that's also snuff. That's about snuff films. I mean, that's about a collection of snuff films. Yeah, because it's a found footage documentary presented as a documentary about a serial killer, but they found all of his tapes in his house. And so those tapes that they were finding, they then put them like this. They're putting them in the movie for the audience to see. To what end, we do not know. In that, it's so that you can see the crimes, but it's that same thing of like, the moment you introduce snuff films, everything kind of just goes sideways.
I'm trying to remember, there was a really good, it was a pseudo doc by J.T. Petty called S ampersand Man. So basically Sandman. And he interviews real people like Bill Zabub and some of these other like extreme filmmakers. But then he starts to introduce like maybe one of these people really is a killer, and you're just like, what? Wait, what's going on? And they just like, it's a neat mix of reality and documentary and pseudo reality and documentary. I think he does a great job with it. It's been a while since I've seen it, probably since I saw it at Fantasia back in like 2006. Highly recommended. It's pretty darn neat. And JT Petty's stuff it's pretty cool. He does some very fascinating stuff.
Yeah, I'll have to check it out. It sounds interesting. I mean, it's funny, you know, the director obviously knows the kind of movie that he's making, because there's definitely a scene where, you know, we mentioned the Subspecies t-shirt. The Kima character then has a Cannibal Holocaust t-shirt on. Like the director knows what this is. And I love that, again, he's willing to have the conversations about the violence. I guess I just wish it was more of a nuanced conversation and less kind of taking a backseat to the entertainment. I mean, the movie's very entertaining and well done, but I don't know. I guess maybe the message part of it would have gotten in the way of the movie. It's, you know, it's a longer movie too. It's a 2-hour movie. So it's not like it's an hour and a half breezy. I wish that there had been a little bit more of the conversation about the violence, because it seems kind of compartmentalized to a couple conversations. I am 1 or 2 conversations. I do like the conversation with her and the professor that comes to take over. And he's kind of like, what do you even have to say about violence? It's just going to be superficial. And it almost feels like the filmmaker turning the mirror on himself and being like, this is just going to be a superficial horror movie, and I actually don't have anything to say. Which, like, I mean, again, that's clearly not the case, but you can kind of see that there is a little bit of, you know, wink, wink, nod, nod to that. Yeah,
again, super smart the way that they put this. And then even ratcheting up the tension with that phone call when Kema's calling her and like, he's in on it, get out of there. And when he flips on the speaker and you're just like, oh man. And later on, he's just like, who was that called that day? And he doesn't know that it was Kema. So he's just like, I need to close the loop and make sure that this guy gets eliminated. You need to tell me who it is. I'll give you a quick death if you tell me.
Yeah. He is so Xavier Elorriaga is so menacing in that scene, because you know that he doesn't want to have to kill her. Not that he doesn't want her to die, but because he doesn't want to have to do it himself. He's you know, the hands-off man. He's just I'm just going to profit off of this. I don't actually want to get my hands dirty here.
Right. He's the man behind the curtain the whole time.
But is it implied that he kills the professor? Or the professor just dies? Because Kima presents the tape to Angela and he's like, I saw this, and there he is. But is that it? Is implied that he kills him? Because again, like he's like, the professor was old. They say that like a couple of times, like he was old.
They do say that he had an asthma attack and he was having problems breathing down there. So I wouldn't be surprised if it was natural causes, or maybe the violence in the tape actually did kill him.
Right. Which, I mean, that was more kind of what I was curious if that was your take. Because I kind of was leaning on like the violence was so intense and upsetting that while they didn't kill him, he died because he was unable to, you know, keep it together, I guess, without losing his mind. It's, you know, it's very, you know, it's very Ring-esque a little bit. Like the tape has this kind of, you know, again, we watch the people watching it. So we're less interested in even what's on the tape. I'm kind of surprised that they show it even.
Yeah,
like,
I was very surprised.
Right? Like it would have been a choice to never show it and just have the audio. Because, you know, again, like, and obviously the reason that they show it is because towards the end of the movie, what is on the tape ends up mattering. If she had never looked at the tape, she would not have known where she was, because Kima goes, you know, the garage, go look at the garage. It's the same place. And what's interesting is because she looked at the footage and she looked at the snuff film, she knew that he was the killer. So what does that have to say about the violence in the movie and the way the character has to tacitly not want to watch the violence, but at the same time, if not watching the violence, the character would not make it to the final reel. So again, it's just an interesting, I don't know what the director is trying to say is what I'm getting at.
Again, I do like that we start with the one victim and that when I guess it must be Kemma recognizes her and says, "Oh yeah, she was in our class a few years ago." But then we kind of learn like, "Oh yeah, no, he knew more than what he's letting on." It's a really nice game that the director's playing and the screenwriter does a great job as well. And Mateo Gil and he would work together quite a few times, I think. But yeah, I think he does a great job of reveal and withhold and reveal and withhold and just give us these little pieces of information, a lot of times just enough to make us switch our suspicions.
It really did remind me a lot of the storytelling conventions that Scream uses.
Right.
Where it's like, oh, you're coming through that door and the killer just ran out the other door. Well, you're here. So, and it's like, well, you must be the killer then because you were there. And like, there's a little bit of that here with the Kima character with the battery that she finds that goes on the camera. And she's like, oh, it must be him.
Yeah.
But like, I love those storytelling devices because they tend to work when they're done right. And the director really, similarly to Wes Craven, understands how to really nail those moments. And I think, to your point, they work really well in kind of momentarily diverting the audience's attention so the director can keep doing his stuff in the background with the Bosco character, who, again, is an interesting character. It's just there is an interesting story from his point of view that we just don't get to see because we have to assume that he's on her side throughout. It's similar to, some of the other things that I mentioned, like in Girl with the Dragon Tattoo or anything else, where it's like that character, we don't know that they're the killer. And so because we don't know that they're the killer, we may get a moment where we get to learn their reasonings and their motivations. But in this movie, I don't ever get a sense of why Bosco is doing what he's doing. Other than just because he likes it, maybe.
Yeah, that's what it feels like. It feels like he's one of these guys where I'm good looking and I can get any girl that I want and I can throw them away by killing them whenever I want to too. Right.
Which, I mean, again, like that in and of itself is pretty compelling. And that moment that he has with her at the end of the movie where he's pointing the gun at her and he's like, I'm going to beat you up and then I'm going to start cutting your body parts off. And it's like, this is really upsetting and chilling shit. And he's just rattling it off like he's ordering a fucking burger down at McDonald's. And
I'm going to cut off your hand and put it on your head. I'm just like, oh
yeah. And he's like, I like a coronet. And it's like, fuck, dude, you're fucked up. Like, and again, it's just, I wish that there had been a little bit more of that. And again, I'm complaining about there not being enough in a 2-hour and 4-minute movie, but I don't know. Those are the kinds of things that in these kinds of movies, that's the moment that you use as the storyteller to crystallize everything. And they kind of push it to again, it comes out of nowhere where it's like news flash. And you're like, what the fuck is going on, movie? I appreciate it because it makes sense and it kind of amplifies what they're getting at. But instead of giving the villain that moment, they kind of give that moment to a character we haven't seen before. And I kind of wish they had left it with the characters that we've spent the last 2 hours with, because I think it would have had a little bit more impact if they had.
I really like Eduardo Noriega, and to look at his filmography and just see that he's the main bad guy in The Devil's Backbone and just some of the other roles that he's shown up. He is the Tom Cruise role in Open Your Eyes, and he does such a better job at it. Just the way that he looks, I buy it a lot better. He's really an interesting character, an interesting actor, I should say.
Devil's Backbone's a great movie. That's such a good movie. My Lord.
To me, that's like one of the best Del Toro films. Like that. To me, it's like Chronos, Devil's Backbone, and Pan's Labyrinth are like this great trilogy of horror.
I agree. I do have a very soft spot for the original Hellboy.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Second one, not so much.
Well, the second one, okay, I won't go off into a whole thing about what I think Del Toro should do with his career. So, because I Guillermo, if you're listening, just give me a call, bud. We'll talk.
I mean, if there's a list of projects that you haven't completed on Wikipedia for you,
yeah,
Got a lot of what's the word? Got a lot of rods in the water. Got a lot of hooks in the hooks on the net. Whatever the hell it is. Like some things are going to get through, but there's a lot of unrealized Guillermo del Toro projects.
Oh yeah, he's up there with like Darren Aronofsky. When Aronofsky hit with Pi and Requiem for a Dream and stuff, it was just like, oh cool, he's going to direct this and this and this and this and that. And it's like, whoa, like remember that remake of RoboCop that was supposed to come out 20 years before that shitty remake of RoboCop? Darren Aronofsky was supposed to do that. It's like, oh, okay. Or he was supposed to do a Lone Wolf and Cub remake. It's like, what? Like, I don't know why there's all these remakes. It's like Aronofsky shouldn't be doing remakes, guys.
Remember when he was going to direct Batman Begins?
Oh, yeah.
Batman Year Zero, I think, is what it was even called. Then, like, directly to the title of the comic book. Yeah, I remember that and reading that and being like, whoa, that's crazy. That never happened either. Well, I mean, again, the thing that you and I could definitely empathize with Del Toro is the Hobbit stuff. I mean, again, that was the kind of the big boondoggle of boondoggles. So yeah, I thought about Del Toro when I was watching this movie, because again, like this is not the kind of movie that Del Toro would make. He makes very, very atmospheric horror movies, and this is it's atmospheric in a different way from what Del Toro does. Del Toro is very like Victorian, but like he's very gothic. I mean, that was that Crimson Peak stuff like that. I like what he brings, but I actually really like what the director of this film kind of does as a counterpoint to what other directors are doing at the time, because this comes out 5 years before Devil's Backbone,
right? And
this is so different, but again, it is operating under, again, there are parts of Spanish culture that we as Americans may not know about. And there was all kinds of very brutal violence and all kinds of fucked up shit happening in Spain for a very long time that, again, we as Americans just aren't educated about. And again, in a lot of ways, there's a little bit of a Serbian film in this movie as well, where it's commenting on yes, we want to look away from the violence and keep our heads in the sand about it, but we can't help but look at the violence because we're being shown it every day, or it's essentially inherently part of our culture. And it kind of, the end of the movie kind of gets to that point. And I don't know, like, I think that's an interesting conversation to continue, because I don't think violence in the movies is that thing that, you mentioned in Scream, where it's like, violence, it's ever present and people are being motivated by it. It's like, I don't think it's that, but I think there's an interesting conversation to be had around it. And I think this movie is interested in kind of sparking that conversation. And I think it does a good job of it. I think that this movie is entertaining, but also is engaging with you as an audience. I just think it's maybe a little on the nose. Those last couple shots where they're walking down the hallways in the hospital and all the people are staring up at the TVs. That's meant to be funny, right? It has to be. That part made me laugh. That's the only part of it, because it's like, no way they would be showing the snuff film
on
ABC News. Like, well, I guess the question is, would they? Because, they showed 9/11 constantly, people jumping out of buildings. They've never shown like a beheading on CNN, have they?
No, you had to go out oh God, what was the name of that site?
You had to go out to.
I'm trying to remember, because I remember when Daniel Pearl was beheaded.
Yep.
And it was like, I can't remember, like, what was it, Rotten or something like that?
Oh, there used to be
a site for that. And somebody at my work was about to watch that, and as they started, I had to turn away, because I made the mistake. I watched that Bud Dwyer footage.
Sure.
And that scarred me for life. Like, I can still picture it in my head, and I don't want to have pictured that. I really regret that I ever watched that.
Jeez Louise.
Yeah.
I only know, I mean, I don't, what the hell are we talking about this Bud Dwyer thing? We just talked about this. Was this on a Barney Miller episode?
Do we talk about Bud Dwyer and Barney Miller?
You talked about Bud Dwyer because I brought up the "Hey man, nice shot" thing.
Oh no, that was not me. Must be your other friend.
That was me, Spencer Parsons. Maybe, I guess it must be Spencer.
Yeah, I know. Like, when that song came out, I, like a lot of other people, thought it was all about Kurt Cobain. And then it was like, no, this is about Bud Dwyer. It's like, really? I still think it's about Kurt Cobain.
It's weird that it's about Bud Dwyer. Filter was just a fan of Bud Dwyer so much. Like, great.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I you mentioned how kind of over the top and kind of maybe tongue in cheek and unrealistic it is to be showing the snuff film, but maybe it's not. I mean, in this day and age, like maybe it was a little more prescient than it would have hoped it was going to be by having them show an actual snuff film on the 5 o'clock news. I mean, they do say that, these images may be disturbing.
Right. Well, I wonder too, like, because this is Spain and because they just had all these years of Franco, who died in 76. And yeah, they're still feeling the repercussions 20 years later. These people that are our heroes were being born around the time that Franco was dying, but yet his system was still in place for a long time. That took a while to dismantle it. Yeah, maybe they're talking about, that they can never escape from that. And plus, my original point was, what would they show during Franco's reign? Was it like, hey, we're going to execute political prisoners on TV tonight?
Right. Well, and I mean, the title of the movie is Thesis, which, I mean, again, double meaning, right? The thesis of the movie is the movie we're watching. So, yeah, I wondered that myself, given, like you mentioned, Franco and his regime and kind of the fascism that was going on in the country and unescapable fascism. So, yeah, Serbian film kind of had that same message of, the inescapable brutality of just existing in the country at the time and going about your daily life and seeing. Because, again, there are people in Ukraine right now that are going about their daily lives, not normally, but semi-pseudo normally, but seeing violence taking place on the news in their own country. And again, it's like, this is, for a certain generation of people in this country, this will be an inescapable part of their life that they will have to contend with. And maybe that's why Angela has such a hard time looking away. It's because you've been conditioned to watch. And to look away is to reject it. But again, she rejects it, but at the same time, she can't help but be enthralled by it. And I think that just like her, I am the same way. I don't think again, I spent better part of my last weekend watching a James Bond movies, and those are just violence for violence's sake. What does that, again, what does that even mean anymore? Somebody described the Bond movies to me over the weekend as potato chips. And it's like, how many people get killed in these movies? That's a lot of bullet holes with potato chips. Like but again, like it's a desensitization thing. And what does it mean to be so desensitized to the violence, but at the same time be so drawn to it? Because we all know that the kind of violence in this movie is deplorable, but Angela just can't help herself. At any point, can she help herself?
Keep your eyes shut, Marion.
Don't look back. Don't look back.
Yeah. Yeah, it's Lot's wife all over again, right? Lot made it out of the city just fine. And for the rest of his life, his kids would say, "Can you pass Mom, Dad? This food's kind of bland."
I mean, again, and I wonder what the director is getting at by having the salvation that she finds come through the fact that she had to watch it. Because again, that's the question. If the character doesn't watch the tape and she's only listening to it, she never would have known about the red stripe, which again, imagery being what it is, the red stripe on white, on the white tiling. I mean, again, it's just the amount of imagery and symbolism in the movie that they kind of hint at, but don't really get into. I don't know. I appreciate that the movie ends up being more entertaining than it is kind of deep, but it does have those moments that it touches on, which I think end up enriching a already fantastic movie. Anything else?
I don't think so. I think this is a great discussion. I'm glad that I rewatched this one because, like I said, it was like seeing it again for the first time.
So I'll ask you then final thoughts, though you kind of already gave them.
Yeah, I guess I did. But like Chris said, it's free out on YouTube right now. Track it down. Or if you got to buy a DVD of it, I don't know if it's out on Blu-ray. I would hope. But, this was also, it's kind of interesting because this was 1996. Here in the States, it was that boom of all these independent films. And you forget about other countries having their, movements and independent films and these kind of things at the same time. I mean, this was kind of a golden age for us when we were able to see things from other countries that we hadn't really seen before, as well as pushing the envelope of some of the films here in the States, seeing things because, we had gotten kind of old and crusty during the late parts of the 80s into the early 90s. You know, we had, it's like, how many times can you remake Lethal Weapon was basically what was going on with a lot of cinema. And then here we are with like, okay, like it or dislike it, but like Pulp Fiction and these kind of movies really help blow the lid off of, you know, what was the norm and really help pave the way for a lot of other films that you normally wouldn't have been able to see, that wouldn't have gotten green light. People were taking chances, and this was a very chancy film.
I honestly, you kind of put it best. Like I'm surprised that I haven't had this mentioned to me in that same conversation of like indie films from the 90s, because it feels I mean, even though it is Spanish language, it does have that exact feel of like so many Miramax things that were coming out in the 90s, and this is distributed by Universal. So there you go. They're getting in on it. But yeah, it's just it lives in a certain time and place, but the subject matter that it's talking about is maybe a little 5 years too early. You know, yeah. like once everybody got to watch a snuff film for 24 hours straight and then some with 9/11, it felt like the conversation about snuff films became different. And this movie comes out 5 years before that. Yeah.
Yeah. It's funny because we were just having a conversation. I don't know what this says about my generation. Maybe your generation does the same thing, but there's a bunch of us having drinks and smoking cigars the other night, and the conversation turned to where were you on 9/11 and just a lot of 9/11 talk. And we started to talk about all the little dots that we saw coming out of the towers, and then realizing that those were people. Yeah, we were watching all these people die.
And like, again, like that's where the conversation about snuff films kind of takes a weird turn. Because, I mean, again, you watch this as a Zapruder film just once. That's a snuff film. And that's,
oh yeah.
Go watch any of those JFK documentaries. How many times are they going to play that fucking thing over and over, back into the left, over? Oliver Stone would cream himself so many times. Like, and it's just, again, it's a weird, because whenever we talk snuff, normally it's what this movie's presenting, where it's a videotape found by somebody who then is trying to figure out where it came from. Is it real? If it's real, what does that mean? But snuff films in real life are much more historically driven and tied to these historical moments in time. And we kind of lose sight of the fact that they are snuff films, and they kind of just become historical documents or artifacts that you can kind of look at from a distance. But you have to remember, at a moment in time, someone died to make this. And unwillingly, I mean, even in the case of this movie, and all the characters that Bosco kills are unwillingly murdered, but they're not watching his shit on the 9 o'clock news. No matter what this movie says, it's not happening in our reality. The fucking freaked out reality of this movie, on the other hand, is a more hilarious reality than our own, because yeah, the biggest laugh for me was the end. And yeah, no, I'm with you. I'm glad I watched this movie. I'm glad you and I got to talk about it. Again, it opens up some avenues for some other things, some other movies that we've talked about that you can check out if you're interested in watching more snuff film stuff, which may say something about you if you're interested in that more than it does us. So, but yeah, on that note, let's take a break and we'll play a preview for the next film of Spanish Language Month.
In Tita's kitchen, ordinary spices become a recipe for passion in the magical movie critics are falling in love with. Like water for chocolate. An instant classic, erotic and delectable, scrumptious, sensual, and visually alluring. 2 thumbs up, way up. Prepare for a treat. The extraordinary new film by acclaimed director Alfonso Arau, Like Water for Chocolate, rated R. Now playing at select theaters.
That's right. On the next film of Spanish Language Month, we're going to be taking a look at 1992's Como Agua para Chocolate. Like water for chocolate. Yeah.
Muy bien. Magical realism.
Another 90s Spanish language movie, except this one is distributed by Miramax. So
I saw that at the theater, man. That was how big that movie was. And that was the power of Miramax, even at that time, getting that sucker hyped up enough that everybody was coming to see it.
I'm looking forward to it. I'm going to be joined by Susan Lambert-Haddam of the 80s TV Ladies podcast and Father Malone of Noise Junkies and Night Gallery, Midnight Viewing. That's what it's called. And yeah, until then, where can people find you, Mike, and the things that you work on?
You can always find me over at weirdingwaymedia.com, where you can find the main show that I work on, Projection Booth Podcast, which is also available at projectionboothpodcast.com. But you can hear all kinds of other things that we do. Chris, why don't you tell the folks at home what they can hear?
Oh my God, you can hear Rankin' on Bass, you can hear Twisted and Uncorked, you can hear Noise Junkies and the Feminine Critique and the Filmentaries podcast, which is hosted by Jamie Benning, and he just put a book out about The Return of the Jedi, a movie that is a Star Wars movie that features little teddy bears. But you know what? His book goes into details that I'm sure if you're a fan of Star Wars, you will be interested in. You can find all that and more over at weirdingwaymedia.com. As for this show, you can find this show at culturecast.com, but I want to take an opportunity to plug the Patreon, which is different. Now there are 3 tiers that you can get in on: Completionist, Double Feature Guru, and Director's Chair. Completionist gives you access to all the monthly bonus episodes that cannot be found anywhere else other than patreon.com/culturecast. Double Feature Guru allows you twice a year to program movies that we get to talk about. And hey, if you're really nice, I may even let you pick who talks about it if they're available. And Director's Chair means you get to program an entire month of movies, including the Patreon bonus episode. That's like 5 or 6 movies. And if you're looking for us to talk about some things that we're probably never going to talk about otherwise, that's where you would go to do that. As for me, you can find me there. And that's it, folks. Go there, do that, and join in the conversation if you want to by, sharing, rating, reviewing on iTunes, Spotify, or wherever you get the show. Mike, thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you, Chris. Thanks for inviting me on this month. And I'm really excited to hear the rest of your Spanish language selections.
Well, thank you. No, it's always fun to just, me and you record. We don't do our own shows, just the two of us, very often, but we do other things. But it's nice to just talk movies for once. Weird. Yeah. We'll catch you on the next episode, folks.